Before we dive in, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. And don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10 when we're done. Let's get started. Madison Cole stood in front of her bedroom mirror, smoothing down the emerald silk dress that cost half her monthly salary. The fabric clung to her curves in ways that made her both confident and self-conscious, the plunging neckline revealing just enough to be elegant, without crossing into scandalous territory. Her honey blonde hair was swept into an artful updo, a few deliberate tendrils framing her face. She looked like she belonged at the Parker family reunion. She looked like someone who had her life together. Both were lies. You can do this, she whispered to her reflection, applying one more coat of mascara with slightly trembling hands. It's just one night. Smile, nod, show off your fake fiancé, and get out. The fake fiancé in question was supposed to arrive in 20 minutes. Madison glanced at her phone, rereading the confirmation from Elite Companions, a discreet service that provided, as their website delicately phrased it, professional partners for social occasions. She'd paid $800 for a handsome, well-dressed man to play her devoted fiancé for exactly 4 hours. It seemed like a ridiculous amount of money, but it was cheaper than enduring another year of her cousin Vanessa's smug remarks about Madison's perpetually single status. Last year's reunion had been unbearable. Vanessa, newly engaged to a hedge fund manager, had spent the entire evening flaunting her 3-carat diamond and making passive-aggressive comments. "Oh, Madison, still focusing on your career? How admirable. Some of us just want the whole package. You know? Love, success, family." The memory still made Madison's jaw clench. This year would be different. This year, she'd walk in with a gorgeous man on her arm, and for once, she'd be the one smiling while Vanessa seethed. Her phone buzzed. A message from the service. "Your companion is en route. Arrival in 15 minutes. Madison's stomach fluttered with nerves. She'd selected him from an online gallery, choosing a man named James who had dark hair, a strong jaw, and a biography that listed his interests as classical music, fine dining, and intelligent conversation. Perfect fake fiancé material. She grabbed her clutch and headed downstairs to wait, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors of her modest townhouse. Through the front window, she could see her quiet suburban street, lined with maple trees just beginning to turn gold in the early autumn evening. Any minute now, a sleek car would pull up, and James would step out, ready to play his part. Any minute now. Then she heard it. A sound that didn't belong in her middle-class neighborhood. A deep, thunderous roar that made the windows rattle. Madison rushed to the door and flung it open, her jaw dropping at the sight before her. A helicopter. A gleaming black helicopter was descending onto the empty lot across the street, its rotors whipping the maple trees into a frenzy, sending leaves spiraling through the air like golden confetti. Neighbors emerged from their houses, phones raised, filming the spectacle. Madison stood frozen on her doorstep, her mind unable to process what was happening. "There must be some mistake," she muttered. "This can't be for me." The helicopter touched down with surprising grace, and the door opened. A man stepped out, ducking slightly under the still spinning rotors. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than her car. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and confident lines. As he strode toward her house, Madison noticed the way he moved with absolute certainty, like a man who owned every space he entered. He stopped at the end of her walkway and smiled, a slow, devastating smile that made her heart forget how to beat properly. "Madison Cole?" His voice was deep, smooth, with just a hint of gravel. She managed a nod, still unable to form words. "I'm Nathaniel Harding. I believe you're expecting me." He extended his hand, and she shook it automatically, her mind screaming 1,000 questions. His hand was warm, his grip firm but not crushing. Yes." But Madison gestured helplessly at the helicopter. That's a bit much for a fake date, don't you think? Nathaniel's smile widened, revealing perfect white teeth. Elite Companions believes in making an entrance. Shall we? We wouldn't want to be late. He offered his arm, and Madison, still too shocked to argue, took it. As they walked toward the helicopter, she was acutely aware of every neighbor watching, of Mrs. Henderson from next door with her mouth hanging open, of the teenage boy across the street recording everything on his phone. This is insane, she whispered as Nathaniel helped her into the helicopter, his hand steady on her waist. This is memorable, he corrected, settling into the seat beside her and handing her a pair of noise-canceling headphones. Isn't that what you wanted? Before she could respond, the helicopter lifted off, and Madison's stomach dropped as the ground fell away beneath them. She gripped the seat, watching her neighborhood shrink to dollhouse proportions, the suburban streets giving way to the glittering expanse of the city skyline. You okay? Nathaniel's voice came through the headphones, tinged with amusement. Madison turned to glare at him, but the effect was probably ruined by the grin she couldn't suppress. You could have warned me. Where's the fun in that? He leaned back, utterly relaxed, as if flying around in private helicopters was as ordinary as taking a taxi. Besides, if we're going to convince your family you're engaged to someone impressive, we might as well commit to the role. I said comfortable, not billionaire. He shrugged, his gray eyes glinting with mischief. I don't do anything halfway, Madison. You hired me to play a part. Let me play it well. The flight took only 12 minutes, but it felt like entering another world. They landed on the rooftop helipad of the Grand Meridian Hotel, where the Parker family reunion was being held in the opulent ballroom. As they descended in the private elevator, Madison tried to steady her nerves. Okay, she said, more to herself than to Nathaniel. Quick briefing. My cousin Vanessa is the one we need to impress. She's the blonde who'll be wearing something expensive and showing off her engagement ring. My Aunt Patricia will ask invasive questions about wedding plans. My Uncle George will try to talk business and investments. Can you handle that? Nathaniel adjusted his cufflinks, a small smile playing at his lips. I think I can manage. The elevator doors opened, and they stepped into a hallway adorned with crystal sconces and plush burgundy carpet. Madison could hear the sounds of the party ahead, the murmur of conversation and clinking glasses, the soft melody of a string quartet. She took a deep breath. Nathaniel placed his hand over hers, where it rested in the crook of his arm. Relax, he said softly. We've got this. Just follow my lead. They entered the ballroom together, and Madison felt the moment several heads turned their way. The room was everything she'd expected. Dripping chandeliers, tables laden with elaborate floral centerpieces. Her relatives dressed in their finest, competing to outshine each other. And there, near the bar, was Vanessa. She looked up, her perfectly made-up eyes widening as she took in Madison and Nathaniel. For a delicious moment, her cousin's confident smile faltered. Madison. Her mother Linda rushed over, embracing her warmly. We were wondering when you'd arrive. And who is this handsome gentleman? Mom, this is Nathaniel Harding. My fiancé. The word felt strange on her tongue, but she forced it out with a bright smile. Nathaniel, this is my mother Linda. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Cole. Nathaniel's charm was effortless as he shook her mother's hand. Madison speaks of you constantly. Linda practically glowed. Oh, she does? Well, isn't that lovely? I had no idea Madison was engaged. When did this happen? Recently, Madison said quickly. We wanted to keep it private for a while. How romantic. Linda beamed. You must tell everyone. Come, come. Before Madison could protest, her mother was dragging them toward the center of the room, where a cluster of relatives stood gossiping. Among them was Vanessa, her expression now carefully neutral, though her eyes glittered with suspicion. Everyone, Madison has wonderful news. Linda announced. She's engaged. A chorus of congratulations erupted, and Madison found herself surrounded by aunts, uncles, and cousins, all demanding to see a ring, hear the proposal story, know the wedding date. Panic rose in her throat. She hadn't thought this through. She didn't have a ring. She didn't have a story. Nathaniel's arm slipped around her waist, pulling her close against his side. "I'm afraid the ring is being custom designed," he said smoothly. "Madison has exquisite taste, and I wanted something worthy of her. As for the proposal..." He gazed down at Madison with such warmth that her breath caught. It was simple, really. We were walking through Central Park at sunset, and I realized I couldn't imagine my life without her. So I asked. And thankfully, she said yes. The relatives sighed collectively, charmed by the story Nathaniel had spun from thin air. Madison stared up at him, momentarily forgetting this was all an act. He looked at her like she was the only person in the room, like she mattered more than anything. "How did you two meet?" Vanessa's voice cut through the warm moment, sharp with skepticism. Nathaniel didn't miss a beat. "A conference," he said. "Financial Innovation Summit. Madison was covering it for her publication, and I was speaking on emerging market trends. She asked the most insightful question during the Q&A. I had to know more about the woman with such a brilliant mind." He paused, his smile turning playful. And of course such stunning eyes. Madison felt heat rise to her cheeks. "He's exaggerating." "I never exaggerate about important things," Nathaniel countered, his gaze holding hers. Vanessa's perfectly glossed lips pressed into a thin line. "How wonderful. And what do you do, Nathaniel?" "I run a few companies," he said casually. "Venture capital, primarily. Some real estate holdings. It keeps me busy." "Venture capital." Uncle George perked up immediately. "Which firm?" "Harding Equity Group." The room went silent. Someone gasped. Uncle George's face went pale, then red. "Harding. As in Nathaniel Harding? The Nathaniel Harding?" Nathaniel's expression remained modest. "I'm not sure I'm famous enough to warrant the emphasis. But yes." Madison's head spun. She didn't follow finance closely, but even she recognized that name. Harding Equity Group was one of the most powerful investment firms in the country. Which meant Nathaniel Harding wasn't just pretending to be wealthy. He was actually a billionaire. A real, legitimate billionaire. "Oh my God," she whispered. Nathaniel glanced at her, a hint of apology in his eyes. Surprise? Her mind raced. Elite companions charged $800. There was no way, absolutely no way they had sent her an actual billionaire CEO as her fake date. This had to be some cosmic mistake, some ridiculous mix-up. Unless he wasn't from elite companions at all. "Can we talk?" Madison hissed under her breath. "Privately?" "Of course, darling." He excused them smoothly, guiding Madison through the French doors onto a moonlit terrace overlooking the city. The terrace was blessedly empty, the cool night air a relief after the stifling attention inside. Madison pulled away from Nathaniel, whirling to face him, her emerald dress swirling around her legs. "Who are you really?" she demanded. "I told you, Nathaniel Harding." He leaned against the stone balustrade, maddeningly calm. "And before you ask, no, I'm not from elite companions." Madison's stomach dropped. "Then why are you here? How did you even know about tonight? I have a confession to make." He pushed off the balustrade, moving closer. "I'm a friend of your colleague, Brian Matthews. He mentioned you were in a bind, needing a date for tonight. When I heard the situation, I intervened." "Intervened," Madison repeated flatly. "You commandeered my fake date. I convinced elite companions to let me take the assignment. Pro bono, of course. They were quite happy to refund your money and accept my donation to their discretionary fund. He had the audacity to look sheepish. I may have thrown around some weight. But why? Madison's voice rose. Why would a billionaire pretend to be a rent-a-date? Is this some kind of joke to you? Are you going to go back to your rich friends and laugh about the desperate woman who hired a fake fiancé? No. The word was quiet but firm. Nathaniel closed the distance between them, and Madison found herself backed against the balustrade, trapped between cold stone and his warm presence. I did it because 6 months ago you walked into my office to interview me for an article about corporate philanthropy. Do you remember? Madison blinked, searching her memory. 6 months ago, she'd interviewed dozens of people. But slowly, the memory surfaced. A sleek corner office. A CEO who'd been surprisingly thoughtful, who'd talked about responsibility and legacy instead of profits and margins. That was you? You wrote a beautiful piece, Nathaniel said softly. But more than that, you challenged me. You asked if I was giving back because I cared, or because it looked good for shareholders. No one had ever asked me that before. And I didn't have a good answer. That bothered me. You bothered me, in the best way. His hand came up, fingertips brushing her jaw so gently she almost didn't feel it. I wanted to see you again, but you never returned my calls. You called? Madison's voice came out breathless. Twice. You were always in a meeting or out on assignment. I got the message. But when Brian mentioned tonight, I thought maybe I could help. Selfishly, I also thought it was a second chance. Madison's heart hammered. This couldn't be real. Men like Nathaniel Harding didn't pursue women like her, middle-class journalists with student loan debt and second-hand furniture. This is crazy, she whispered. Probably, he agreed. But crazy has been working out pretty well so far. Your cousin looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Despite herself. Madison laughed. She did, didn't she? And your Uncle George is probably inside right now, Googling my net worth and planning how to pitch me his timeshare investment scheme. He absolutely is. Madison giggled. Tension, dissolving into giddy relief. Nathaniel's smile softened. So what do you say? Do we go back inside and finish what we started? Or do you want me to leave? Madison studied him. The ridiculous helicopter entrance, the ease with which he'd charmed her family, the way he looked at her like she was something precious. It was overwhelming. It was terrifying. It was also, she realized, the most alive she'd felt in years. Let's make Vanessa regret every smug comment she's ever made, Madison decided. Nathaniel's grin turned wicked. I was hoping you'd say that. They returned to the ballroom hand in hand, and Madison quickly realized that Nathaniel wasn't just playing a part, he was orchestrating a masterpiece. When Aunt Patricia cornered them asking about wedding venues, Nathaniel casually mentioned he owned a vineyard in Napa that would be perfect for an intimate ceremony. When Vanessa's fiancé tried to brag about his hedge fund, Nathaniel listened politely, then accidentally mentioned that his firm had just closed a deal worth more than the other man's annual revenue. Each revelation was delivered without arrogance, but the impact was devastating. By the time dinner was served, Madison's family treated Nathaniel like visiting royalty, and Vanessa had retreated to a corner table, her own fiancé looking distinctly inadequate by comparison. You're evil, Madison murmured as they sat down to eat. I'm thorough, Nathaniel corrected, squeezing her hand under the table. There's a difference. Dinner was a lavish affair, course after course of gourmet food that Madison barely tasted. She was too aware of Nathaniel beside her, the way his knee occasionally brushed hers, the way he laughed at her whispered observations about various relatives. When the dancing began, he stood and offered his hand. May I? On the dance floor, he pulled her close, one hand at her waist, the other cradling her fingers. They moved together easily, swaying to the orchestra's rendition of an old classic. You're a good dancer, Madison observed. My mother insisted on lessons. She said a gentleman should know how to lead. He spun her gently, then brought her back against him. What about you? Where did you learn? YouTube videos and wedding receptions. Madison grinned. I'm mostly faking it. You're doing beautifully. His voice was low, intimate, meant only for her ears. Around them, other couples danced, but Madison felt cocooned in their own private world. The ballroom lights caught on Nathaniel's dark hair, casting shadows across his angular face. He really was devastatingly handsome, but it was more than that. It was the way he listened when she spoke, the way he seemed genuinely interested in her rambling stories about her journalism career. Nathaniel, she said quietly, why are you really doing this? And don't say it's just because I wrote a nice article. He was quiet for a moment, his gray eyes searching hers. Because when I met you 6 months ago, you looked at me and saw a person, not a bank account. You asked hard questions. You made me think. And when I read your article, I realized you'd seen something in me I'd forgotten was there. What? Purpose, he said simply. Not profit, not success. Purpose. You wrote that I seemed like a man searching for something meaningful. You were right. I've spent 15 years building companies, making money, being the ruthless CEO everyone expects. But I don't know when I last did something just because it felt right. His hand tightened on her waist. Helping you tonight, seeing you smile, watching you stand tall in front of people who've made you feel small. That feels right. That feels meaningful. Madison's throat tightened with emotion. You don't even know me. Then let me. It wasn't a question. It was an invitation, honest and open and terrifying in its sincerity. Before Madison could respond, the song ended, and polite applause rippled through the room. Nathaniel stepped back, his hand lingering on hers for just a moment longer than necessary. I should probably circulate, he said. Your Uncle George has been giving me meaningful looks for the past 20 minutes. I think he wants to talk investments. Please don't actually invest in his timeshare scheme, Madison begged. He'll lose everything. I'll let him down gently, Nathaniel promised, pressing a quick kiss to her temple that sent electricity down her spine. Madison watched him go, her heart a confused tangle of emotions. This was supposed to be simple. Hire a date, survive the reunion, go home. Instead, she was falling for a man so far out of her league they weren't even playing the same sport. Well. Vanessa appeared at her elbow, champagne glass in hand, her smile sharp. Quite the catch you've landed, Madison. Though I have to wonder how you managed it. Nathaniel Harding could have anyone. Models, actresses, heiresses. What's a journalist with a studio apartment got that they don't? A year ago, that comment would have shredded Madison's confidence. But tonight, having watched Nathaniel choose to be here, having felt the sincerity in his touch, she found strength she didn't know she had. Apparently, Madison said sweetly, a personality. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. This whole thing feels rushed. You never mentioned him before. How do we even know this is real? You don't, Madison replied. But you know what, Vanessa? I don't owe you proof. I don't owe you explanations. I came here tonight expecting to endure your passive-aggressive comments for the millionth time. Instead, I'm having a wonderful evening with an incredible man. So whether you believe it's real or not, I genuinely don't care. She walked away before Vanessa could respond, her heart pounding with adrenaline and satisfaction. Across the room, she caught Nathaniel's eye. He was trapped in conversation with Uncle George, but he winked at her, and she had to suppress a laugh. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of champagne, cake, and increasingly enthusiastic relatives. By the time Nathaniel suggested they leave, Madison's cheeks hurt from smiling. Your family is lovely, he said as they rode the elevator back to the roof. overwhelming, but lovely. They're going to have a million questions tomorrow, Madison groaned. Especially now that they know who you are. We'll handle it together. The casual assumption that there would be a together, a tomorrow, made Madison's pulse skip. On the rooftop, the helicopter waited. Rotors still. Nathaniel helped her inside, and moments later they were airborne again, the city spreading beneath them like a carpet of lights. Where to? Nathaniel asked through the headphones. I can take you home, or? He hesitated, and for the first time all evening, he looked uncertain. Or we could get coffee. I know a place that's open late. Quiet. We could talk without your relatives dissecting every word. Madison knew she should say no. This was already too much, too fast, too impossible. But when she looked at Nathaniel, at the hope in his eyes, she couldn't bring herself to end the night. Coffee sounds good, she said softly. His smile could have lit the entire city. They landed in a private area of the airport, and Nathaniel led her to a waiting car. Not a limo, just a sleek black sedan. He drove himself, navigating the late-night streets with easy confidence. The coffee shop was tucked into a quiet corner of downtown, the kind of place with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. At nearly midnight, it was almost empty, just a barista reading behind the counter and a college student typing furiously on a laptop. Not what I expected from a billionaire's idea of coffee. Madison teased as they settled into a worn leather couch with steaming mugs. I bought my first company in a place like this, Nathaniel said. Sitting at a table with coffee and a handshake. Sometimes I come here when I need to remember what it felt like before the boardrooms and the pressure. They talked for hours, about everything and nothing. Nathaniel told her about growing up as the only child of demanding parents, about building his first company from scratch, about the loneliness that came with success. Madison shared her dreams of investigative journalism, her fear that she'd never write anything truly important, her complicated relationship with her family's expectations. Somewhere around 2 a.m, she realized she was leaning against his shoulder, exhausted but unwilling to move. I should get you home, Nathaniel murmured, his voice rough with tiredness. You should, Madison agreed, but neither of them moved. Finally, reluctantly, they left. Nathaniel drove her back to her townhouse, the streets empty and peaceful. When he walked her to her door, Madison felt 16 again, nervous about a goodnight kiss. Thank you, she said, for tonight, for everything. You didn't have to go to such extremes. I wanted to, he said simply. Then, carefully, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned down and kissed her. It was soft, tentative, nothing like the confident way he'd commanded the evening. It was a question, an invitation, a promise. Madison kissed him back, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, feeling his heartbeat thundering beneath her palms. When they finally parted, both were breathless. Can I see you again? Nathaniel asked. A real date this time, not a performance. I'd like that, Madison whispered. He smiled, pressing one more kiss to her forehead before stepping back. I'll call you, and this time, please answer. I will, she promised. She watched him drive away, then floated inside, barely believing any of it had happened. But the next morning, when she woke to a text message, reality crashed back in. The message was from an unknown number, but the words made Madison's blood run cold. Enjoyed the show last night. Might want to ask your fiancé about the Henderson Technologies deal. Not everything that glitters is gold. A concerned friend. Madison sat up in bed, her mind racing. Henderson Technologies. She vaguely recognized the name from business news, some kind of scandal involving insider trading allegations. But what did that have to do with Nathaniel? She grabbed her laptop, searching for information. What she found made her stomach sink. 3 months ago, Henderson Technologies had collapsed spectacularly after accusations of financial fraud. Several executives were under investigation. And right there in the list of major shareholders who'd sold their stakes just before the collapse was Harding Equity Group. The timing was suspicious. Perfectly suspicious. Sell right before the crash. Avoid massive losses while smaller investors got destroyed. It looked exactly like insider trading. Madison's journalist instincts warred with her personal feelings. On one hand, Nathaniel had been nothing but kind to her, genuine in ways that felt impossible to fake. On the other hand, she'd built her career on asking hard questions and following evidence wherever it led. She needed to know the truth. Madison spent the entire Sunday researching, pulling articles, financial reports, regulatory filings. The more she read, the worse it looked. Harding Equity had sold 85% of their Henderson holdings exactly 2 weeks before the scandal broke. Either that was the luckiest timing in investment history, or someone had inside information. By Sunday night, she'd made her decision. She texted Nathaniel. "We need to talk. Can you meet tomorrow?" His response came within minutes. "Of course. My office? Noon?" Madison agreed, then spent a sleepless night rehearsing what she'd say, how she'd ask the questions that needed asking without sounding like she was accusing him. When she arrived at Harding Equity Group's downtown headquarters Monday at noon, she was escorted to the top floor by an efficient assistant. Nathaniel's office was impressive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than her annual salary, walls lined with awards and photos of Nathaniel shaking hands with presidents and CEOs. He stood when she entered, his smile warm but fading when he saw her expression. "Madison? What's wrong?" She placed her laptop on his desk, the Henderson Technologies article still open on the screen. "Tell me about this." Nathaniel's face went carefully neutral. He scanned the screen, then sat back in his chair. "Someone sent you this? It doesn't matter who sent it. Is it true? Did you sell your stake right before the company collapsed?" "Yes." The single word hit like a punch. Madison had been hoping for denial, for some explanation that would make this all go away. "Did you have inside information?" Madison forced herself to ask, her voice steady despite the way her heart was breaking. "Did you commit insider trading?" "No." Nathaniel met her gaze directly. "I didn't. But I understand why it looks that way." "Then explain it to me," Madison pleaded. "Because right now, it looks really, really bad." Nathaniel stood, pacing to the windows. For a long moment, he was silent, and Madison could see the tension in his shoulders. "6 months ago, I hired a new analyst," he finally said. "Brilliant kid, fresh out of MIT, saw patterns in data that others missed. He came to me with concerns about Henderson's accounting practices, inconsistencies in their quarterly reports, revenue numbers that didn't match up with industry trends." "So you sold," Madison said. "Based on suspicions. Based on analysis," Nathaniel corrected. "That's what I do, Madison. I look at data and make decisions. Sometimes those decisions seem prescient in hindsight." "But you didn't report your concerns? You didn't alert the SEC?" "My analyst did. Anonymously. He filed a whistleblower complaint. But those take time to investigate. In the meantime, I had a fiduciary responsibility to my investors. If I genuinely believed Henderson was overvalued, potentially fraudulent, I couldn't just sit there and let my clients lose money." Madison sank into a chair. It made sense. It was even ethical, in a certain light. But doubt still gnawed at her. "How convenient," she said bitterly. "You make money while everyone else suffers. You think I feel good about this?" Nathaniel's voice rose, frustration breaking through his usual control. "Hundreds of people lost their retirement savings when Henderson collapsed. I see those stories. I read about the families devastated by this. Just because I didn't lose money doesn't mean I'm not affected. But you profited from their misery. I protected my investors. That's my job. They stared at each other, the air between them crackling with tension and hurt. Madison wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him. But her career had taught her that powerful men were very good at justifying their actions, at making the self-serving seem noble. I need time, she said quietly. Time to think about this. Nathaniel's expression shuddered. Of course. Take all the time you need. Madison gathered her things and left, feeling his eyes on her back the entire way. In the elevator, she blinked back tears. She'd known this was too good to be true. Men like Nathaniel didn't fall for women like her without complications. Over the next week, Madison threw herself into research. She requested documents through FOIA, interviewed former Henderson employees, traced the timeline of Nathaniel's sale versus the SEC investigation. What she found didn't exonerate him, but it didn't condemn him either. The whistleblower complaint had indeed been filed before Harding Equity sold their stake. Nathaniel's analyst had flagged genuine red flags. The sale, while perfectly timed, seemed to be based on legitimate analysis rather than illegal inside information. But the optics were terrible, and in the court of public opinion, optics mattered. Madison was writing up her findings, trying to organize her thoughts, when her phone rang. Brian Matthews, the colleague who'd apparently connected her with Nathaniel. Brian, she answered. I need to ask you something. Let me guess. Henderson Technologies? How did you know? Because Nate called me, freaking out that you think he's some kind of criminal. Madison, listen to me. I've known Nathaniel for 10 years. He's one of the most ethical people in finance, and that's saying something. What happened with Henderson? It was good analysis, nothing more. How can you be sure? Madison asked. Because I introduced him to that analyst. The kid's a genius, but he's also Nathaniel's godson. Do you really think Nate would risk that kid's future? Would put him in a position to commit crimes? He sold because the numbers didn't add up. And he was right. Madison closed her eyes. I want to believe that. Then believe it. Or better yet, stop investigating the man and start trusting him. Not everything in life comes with documented proof, Madison. Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith. After Brian hung up, Madison sat in silence. Trust. It was easy to demand truth and evidence. It was much harder to offer faith. Her phone buzzed. A message from Nathaniel. I know you're still thinking about all of this. I don't blame you, but I wanted you to know. My attorney advised me not to talk to you about Henderson. Said it could be used against me if there's ever an investigation. I talked to you anyway because you deserved honesty. Whatever you decide to do with that information, I'll respect your choice. Madison read the message 3 times, her throat tight. He'd risked legal exposure to be honest with her. He'd put her need for truth above his own protection. That had to mean something. She grabbed her keys and headed for the door. Nathaniel's receptionist looked surprised when Madison burst into the office unannounced. Is he available? I need to see him. He's in a meeting, but tell him it's Madison. Please. 5 minutes later, she was being ushered into a conference room where Nathaniel sat with 3 other executives. He stood immediately, concern flashing across his face. Madison? Is everything okay? I need to talk to you. Now. He excused himself without hesitation, leading her to his private office. The moment the door closed, Madison turned to him. I'm sorry, she said in a rush. I'm sorry for doubting you, for immediately assuming the worst. You've been nothing but good to me, and I repaid that by investigating you like you were a criminal. You were protecting yourself, Nathaniel said quietly. I understand that. No, I was being a coward. Madison stepped closer. I was so afraid this was too good to be true that I went looking for reasons to end it before I could get hurt. But that's not fair to you, and it's not fair to us. Us, Nathaniel repeated, something fragile and hopeful in his eyes. Is there an us? I'd like there to be. Madison whispered. "If you can forgive me for being an idiot." He crossed the space between them in 2 strides, pulling her into his arms. There's nothing to forgive. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home, like finding something she didn't know she'd been searching for. Madison wrapped her arms around his neck, kissing him back with all the emotion she'd been holding in for a week. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathaniel rested his forehead against hers. "I meant what I said at the reunion. I want to know you, Madison, the real you, not the performance version. I want late-night conversations and stupid arguments and all of it, even when I drive you crazy with journalist questions. Especially then," he murmured, kissing her again. Later, as they sat together on his office couch, Madison curled against his side, she asked the question that had been nagging her. "Why me? Really? You could date anyone." "Because everyone else looks at me and sees Nathaniel Harding, billionaire CEO," he said simply. "You look at me and see Nate, the guy who's still trying to figure out what matters. That's rarer than you think." Madison smiled against his shoulder. "Well, for what it's worth, I like Nate much better than Nathaniel Harding, corporate raider." "Good," he said. "Because Nate is the one who's falling for you." The next few weeks felt like a dream Madison kept expecting to wake from. Nathaniel called when he said he would. He showed up for dates. Actual dates. Coffee in the morning before work. Dinners at tiny hole-in-the-wall restaurants he'd discovered. Walks through the city as they talked about everything from politics to favorite childhood books. He was remarkably normal for a billionaire. Yes, he had drivers and assistants and more money than Madison could comprehend, but he wore jeans on weekends, forgot to return calls when he was focused on work, and had a completely irrational fear of pigeons that made her laugh every time they walked through the park. "They have dead eyes," he insisted as one strutted past, and Madison giggled into her coffee cup. "They're birds, Nate. Harmless birds." "Harmless?" "They're rats with wings. Unpredictable, aggressive rats with wings. The big bad billionaire, afraid of pigeons." She couldn't stop laughing. "This is perfect. I'm going to tell everyone." "You wouldn't dare," he said, but he was smiling, pulling her close to kiss her soundly despite the fact they were standing in the middle of a busy sidewalk. Madison's friends were, unsurprisingly, losing their minds. "You're dating Nathaniel Harding," her best friend Sophia kept repeating over wine at their favorite bar. "Like, the Nathaniel Harding. How is this your life?" "It's weird, right?" Madison said. "I keep expecting someone to jump out and tell me this is an elaborate prank. Have you Googled him?" "Of course I've Googled him," Madison protested. "I'm a journalist. It's my job to Google people. And he's worth about $3 billion, has donated hundreds of millions to charity, was engaged once when he was 25, but it didn't work out, and according to the tabloids, he's dated a series of models and socialites, but never anything serious." Sophia leaned in. "And you're not freaked out by that? By the models and socialites part?" "A little," Madison admitted. "Okay. A lot. I mean, have you seen these women? They're gorgeous." "You're gorgeous," Sophia said loyally. "Yeah, but I'm normal gorgeous. They're magazine cover gorgeous. There's a difference." "You know what I think?" Sophia said, swirling her wine. "I think Nathaniel dated those women because they were safe. Beautiful, sure, but ultimately superficial. They didn't challenge him. You do. That's scarier, but it's also real." Madison wanted to believe that. Most of the time when she was with Nathaniel, she did believe it. But late at night, doubt crept in, whispering that she didn't belong in his world, that eventually he'd realize it too. Those doubts grew louder the first time Nathaniel invited her to a charity gala. "It's for the children's hospital," he explained over dinner at his penthouse apartment, which had a view that made Madison dizzy every time she looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows. "I'm on the board. I have to go. and I'd really like you there with me." "A gala," Madison repeated. "Like a fancy dress? Champagne? Rich people gala?" "Exactly like that," Nathaniel confirmed. "I know it's not your favorite thing, but—" "I'll go," Madison interrupted. "I want to go." She didn't mention that she was already panicking about what to wear, how to act, whether she'd embarrass him in front of his wealthy friends. The night of the gala, Madison stood in front of her closet. Near tears, she'd bought a new dress, a midnight blue gown that had cost more than her rent. But now she was second-guessing everything. Too fancy? Not fancy enough? Wrong color? She was about to call Sophia in a panic when her doorbell rang. "Package," the delivery person said, handing her an elegant white box. Inside was a dress, and Madison's breath caught. It was stunning. A champagne-colored gown with delicate beading, elegant without being over the top. The note tucked inside read, "I saw this and thought of you. If you hate it, wear something else. If you like it, know that you'll be the most beautiful woman there." And Madison held the dress up, torn between frustration and affection. On one hand, she didn't need Nathaniel buying her expensive gifts. On the other hand, the dress was perfect, and the fact that he'd noticed her nervousness and tried to help was impossibly sweet. She wore the dress. When Nathaniel picked her up, the look on his face made every moment of anxiety worth it. "You're stunning," he breathed, and the way he said it like he genuinely meant it made Madison's cheeks warm. The gala was as intimidating as she'd feared. The ballroom glittered with wealth. Women, in designer gowns, men in tuxedos, everyone looking like they'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Madison gripped Nathaniel's arm, feeling completely out of her depth. "Breathe," he murmured. "You belong here just as much as anyone." "I'm pretty sure I don't," Madison whispered back. "But I'll fake it. That's my girl." He kissed her temple, and somehow that small gesture steadied her. Nathaniel introduced her to dozens of people, donors and board members and society figures. Madison smiled and shook hands and tried to remember names, all while feeling like an imposter. Then she met Victoria Ashford. Victoria was exactly the type of woman Madison had seen in Nathaniel's Google results. Tall and willowy with perfect bone structure and a designer gown that probably cost more than Madison's car. She glided over with the confidence of someone who'd never questioned her place in the world. "Nathaniel, darling." Victoria kissed both his cheeks in that affected way society women did. "It's been ages. How are you?" "Victoria." "I'm well." Nathaniel was polite but distant. "This is Madison Cole." "Madison." "Victoria Ashford." "Charmed," Victoria said, her eyes flicking over Madison in a way that felt distinctly uncharmed. "Cole, any relation to the Boston Coles?" "No," Madison said. "Just the middle-class Ohio Coles." Victoria's smile tightened. How quaint. She turned back to Nathaniel. "We must catch up. I have the most delicious gossip about the Hendersons." "Actually, we were just heading to our table," Nathaniel said smoothly, his hand firm on Madison's waist. "Enjoy your evening, Victoria." As they walked away, Madison muttered, "She seems lovely." "She's a shark," Nathaniel said bluntly. "Old money. Older grudges. Don't let her get to you." "Too late," Madison admitted. "She made me feel about 2 inches tall." Nathaniel stopped, turning Madison to face him. "Listen to me. Victoria and people like her, they measure worth in family names and bank accounts. That's not what matters. You're kind, brilliant, passionate about your work. That's worth more than any pedigree." "You're biased," Madison said. But she was smiling. "Completely," he agreed. "But I'm also right." The rest of the evening was easier. Madison found herself talking to a pediatric surgeon about hospital funding, debating education policy with a philanthropist, even laughing at the table during dinner. Nathaniel's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently, a private reassurance. When the dancing began, he led her onto the floor, pulling her close. "See? You survived, he teased. Barely, Madison said. But I'll admit, it's not as terrible as I feared. High praise. They swayed together, and Madison allowed herself to relax into the moment, into the warmth of his arms and the gentle music, and the feeling that maybe, just maybe, she really did belong here. Then, over Nathaniel's shoulder, she saw Victoria watching them, her expression calculating in a way that sent a chill down Madison's spine. The next morning, Madison woke to her phone buzzing incessantly. Confused, she grabbed it, seeing dozens of notifications, social media tags, news alerts, emails from colleagues. With growing dread, she opened one of the links. The headline made her stomach drop. Billionaire's new flame. From rent-a-date to real romance? The article detailed everything. Madison's fake date arrangement with elite companions, how Nathaniel had swooped in to play the role himself, the family reunion, all of it. Someone had leaked the story, and it was spreading like wildfire. Worse, the article painted her as a gold digger, a nobody who'd trapped Nathaniel Harding through an elaborate scheme. There were quotes from anonymous sources suggesting she'd planned the whole thing, that she'd known who Nathaniel was all along and manipulated him. Oh my God, Madison whispered, scrolling through comment after vicious comment. She's just using him for money. Pathetic. He'll dump her in a month. Did she really think a billionaire would fall for someone like her? Her phone rang. Nathaniel. Don't read the comments, he said immediately. Too late, Madison said, her voice shaking. Nate, this is a disaster. How did this even get out? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Madison, listen to me. This doesn't matter. It's tabloid garbage. It matters to me. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Everyone thinks I'm some kind of opportunistic con artist. My colleagues, my sources, everyone. How am I supposed to work as a journalist when my integrity is being questioned? We'll fix this, Nathaniel said firmly. I'll release a statement, make it clear that our relationship is real, that you didn't manipulate anything. That'll just make it worse, Madison said miserably. It'll look like you're defending me because you're too blind to see the truth. Nate, maybe we should just take a break. Let this blow over. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, quietly, is that what you want? No. The answer rose instantly in Madison's heart. No, she didn't want to lose him. But the alternative was watching him be dragged down by her bad decisions, by her impulsive choice to hire a fake date in the first place. I think it's what's best, she forced herself to say. For both of us. More silence. If that's your decision, I'll respect it, Nathaniel finally said, his voice carefully controlled. But Madison? For what it's worth, I don't care what the tabloids say. I know who you are. After he hung up, Madison collapsed back into bed, sobbing into her pillow. She'd done the right thing. She'd protected him from being associated with her scandal. So why did it feel like the worst mistake of her life? The following week was one of the worst of Madison's life. The tabloid story refused to die, spawning think pieces about modern gold diggers and the dangers of billionaire romance. Her editor called her into his office for an informal chat about journalistic ethics. Her mother phoned, worried, having heard about it from Aunt Patricia. Even Vanessa sent a gleeful text. Guess the fairy tale wasn't real after all. Shame. Madison deleted it without responding. She threw herself into work, chasing stories, conducting interviews, staying late at the office to avoid going home to her empty townhouse where everything reminded her of Nathaniel. The coffee mug he'd used one morning. The book he'd left on her nightstand. The champagne-colored dress hanging in her closet. Sophia staged an intervention on Friday night, showing up with wine and takeout. Okay, enough, she declared, plopping down on Madison's couch. You look terrible. Thanks, Madison said dryly. I mean it. You're miserable. He's probably miserable. Why are you two torturing yourselves? Because it's the right thing to do, Madison insisted. Bullshit, Sophia said bluntly. You're scared. You're using this scandal as an excuse to run away before you can get hurt. That's not, Madison started, but Sophia cut her off. When have you ever cared what people thought? You've built a career on asking uncomfortable questions, on going after powerful people. But suddenly, when your own life gets uncomfortable, you fold? The words hit too close to home. Madison stared into her wine glass. What if they're right? What if I am just some nobody who doesn't belong in his world? First of all, you're not a nobody. You're an award-winning journalist who's exposed corruption and fought for truth. Second, who cares if you don't belong in his world? Maybe he belongs in yours. Or maybe you build a new world together. But you'll never know if you keep hiding. Madison blinked back tears. I miss him, Soph. So much it hurts. Then do something about it, Sophia said gently. Stop letting fear make your decisions. That night, Madison lay awake, thinking about Nathaniel. About the way he laughed at her terrible jokes. The way he listened when she talked about work, asking thoughtful questions. The way he'd looked at her at the gala, like she was the only person in the room. Sophia was right. Madison had spent her whole career being brave, and now, when it mattered most, she was being a coward. At midnight, she made her decision. She grabbed her laptop and started writing. Not an article, but something more personal, more honest. A blog post for her personal website. The one she used for commentary pieces that didn't fit her newspaper's format. She titled it, On Fairy Tales, Fake Dates, and Finding Something Real. In it she told the whole story. The family reunion, the pressure to appear successful, the decision to hire a companion, Nathaniel's unexpected intervention, the helicopter, the growing connection between them. She wrote about falling for him despite her better judgment, about the Henderson scandal and her decision to investigate the man she was dating. She wrote about the leaked story, the vicious comments, her decision to end things. And she wrote about what she'd learned. That love required bravery, that taking risks was scary but necessary, that she'd rather face public scrutiny with Nathaniel than face safety alone. The post ended simply. To Nathaniel, if you're reading this, I'm sorry. I was wrong. And if there's any chance you'd be willing to give us another try, I promise to be braver this time. No more running. No more letting fear win. She hit publish before she could second-guess herself, then closed her laptop and tried to sleep. The response was immediate and overwhelming. By morning, the post had been shared thousands of times. Comments poured in. But these were different. This is the most honest thing I've read in years. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is owning them, rooting for you too. Not everyone was supportive, of course. There were still trolls and skeptics. But the tide had shifted. People were seeing her as human, flawed but genuine. Her phone rang at 700 AM. An unknown number. Hello? Madison answered cautiously. Miss Cole. This is Jennifer Park. I'm Mr. Harding's publicist. I wanted to let you know that Mr. Harding has seen your post. Madison's heart stopped. And he'd like to see you. Today, if possible. Are you free this afternoon? Yes, Madison said immediately. I'm free. Excellent. A car will pick you up at 2. Please don't be alarmed by the route. We're trying to avoid media attention. When the call ended, Madison stared at her phone in disbelief. Then she rushed to get ready, changing outfits 5 times before settling on simple jeans and a soft blue sweater. The car arrived precisely at 2, a nondescript sedan with tinted windows. The driver said nothing as they navigated through the city, eventually pulling into an underground garage Madison didn't recognize. An elevator took her to the top floor of a building she'd never visited. The doors opened to reveal not an office, but a stunning penthouse apartment, all windows and light and tasteful modern furniture. And there, standing by the windows, was Nathaniel. He turned when she entered, and Madison's breath caught. He looked tired, his usual polished appearance slightly rumpled, but his eyes, when they met hers, held a warmth that made her knees weak. "Hi," she said, feeling suddenly shy. "Hi," he replied. They stood there for a moment, the weight of the past week hanging between them. "I read your post," Nathaniel said finally. "I know. Your publicist called. I didn't ask her to," he said quickly. "Jennifer made an executive decision. But I'm glad she did, because I've been going crazy trying to figure out how to reach you without making things worse." Madison took a tentative step closer. "I'm sorry. For running away. For letting fear make my decisions. You deserved better than that." "You were protecting yourself," Nathaniel said. "I understand that. But Madison, you need to understand something too. I don't care about the tabloids. I don't care what society thinks or what the comments say. I care about you." "I care about you too," Madison whispered. "So much that it scares me." "Good," Nathaniel said, and he was suddenly in front of her, his hands cupping her face. "Because you scare me too. I've spent 15 years building walls, staying in control, never letting anyone get close enough to hurt me. And then you showed up with your questions and your honesty and your terrible jokes, and you knocked down every single wall like they were made of paper." Tears spilled down Madison's cheeks. "I don't know how to do this. How to be with someone like you. I don't know the rules of your world." "Then forget the rules," Nathaniel said fiercely. "Forget my world, and your world. We'll make our own." He kissed her then, and it was like coming home, like finding the missing piece she hadn't known she'd been searching for. Madison kissed him back, pouring all her fear and hope and love into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Nathaniel rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he said softly, "not just today. Stay. Move in with me. Wake up next to me. Let's figure this out together." "That's fast," Madison said, but she was smiling through her tears. "We've known each other for barely 2 months." "I know," Nathaniel acknowledged. "But I've never been more sure of anything. Have you?" Madison thought about it. Thought about the past weeks, the way Nathaniel made her laugh, the way he challenged her to be braver, the way she felt complete when he was near. "No," she admitted. "I haven't." "Then say yes." "Yes," Madison whispered, and Nathaniel's smile could have lit the entire city. They spent the rest of the afternoon on his couch, talking and kissing and planning a future that had seemed impossible just hours before. Nathaniel admitted he'd been sleeping in his office all week, unable to stand being in his apartment where they'd spent so many evenings together. Madison confessed she'd cried herself to sleep every night, clutching the book he'd left behind. "We're kind of a mess," Madison observed, curled against his side. "We are," Nathaniel agreed. "But we're a mess together. That's what matters." Over the next few weeks, Madison learned what it meant to build a life with someone. She moved into Nathaniel's penthouse, bringing her second-hand furniture and cluttered books into his minimalist space. He didn't complain, just helped her arrange everything until it felt like home to both of them. She met his business associates and learned to navigate charity dinners without panic attacks. He met her newsroom colleagues and charmed every single one of them with his genuine interest in their work. They argued sometimes about money and publicity and how much time he worked. But they always came back together, always talked it through. Slowly, the media attention faded. Other scandals took their place in the tabloids. Madison and Nathaniel became just another couple, albeit one with a slightly unconventional origin story. 3 months after Madison moved in, Nathaniel came home early from work with a strange expression on his face. "What's wrong?" Madison asked, looking up from her laptop where she was working on an article. "Nothing's wrong," he said. "But I need to show you something." He led her to the bedroom, where a garment bag lay across the bed. "Open it," he urged. Confused, Madison unzipped the bag and gasped. Inside was the most beautiful wedding dress she'd ever seen, simple and elegant with delicate lace details. Nate, what? She turned to find him on one knee, holding a velvet box. The first time we did this, it was fake, Nathaniel said, his voice rough with emotion. I pretended to be your fiancé for a party, and somehow it turned into the realest thing in my life. Madison Cole, I love you. I love your questions and your courage and the way you steal my coffee every morning. I love how you make me want to be better. Do better. Will you marry me? For real this time? Madison's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Yes, she managed. Yes, of course yes. Nathaniel slipped the ring onto her finger, a stunning emerald surrounded by diamonds, and pulled her into his arms. I had the dress made, he murmured against her hair. I hope that's not presumptuous. I just saw the design and thought of you, and I wanted to be ready when you said yes. You were that sure? Madison asked, laughing through her tears. I was that hopeful, he corrected. That weekend, they flew to visit Madison's family. Nathaniel had called ahead, asking permission to propose, wanting to do things right. When they arrived at her mother's house, this time in a normal car, not a helicopter, the whole family was waiting. Is it true? Madison's mother asked the moment they walked in. Did he really propose? Madison held up her hand, the ring sparkling in the afternoon light. Her mother squealed, pulling them both into a hug. Even Vanessa managed to smile, though it looked a bit pained. Congratulations, she said stiffly. Thank you, Madison replied graciously. Later, Madison found her cousin alone in the kitchen. Look, Vanessa said before Madison could speak. I was horrible to you. All those comments about being single, about not having your life together. I was projecting my own insecurities, and I'm sorry. Madison blinked in surprise. Thank you for saying that. You deserve to be happy, Vanessa continued. And Nathaniel clearly adores you. It's actually kind of disgustingly sweet. Madison laughed. We have our moments. The wedding was planned for the following spring, a small ceremony at Nathaniel's vineyard in Napa. Just family and close friends, nothing ostentatious. Exactly what they both wanted. On their wedding day, as Madison stood in the beautiful dress Nathaniel had chosen, Sophia helped her with the final touches. So, her best friend said, adjusting Madison's veil. From fake fiancé to real husband. That's quite a journey. Best $800 I never spent, Madison joked. Walking down the aisle to where Nathaniel waited, looking impossibly handsome in his tuxedo, Madison thought about the scared woman who'd hired a fake date to survive a family reunion. She'd been so afraid of appearing unsuccessful, of being judged, of being alone. Now, surrounded by people who loved her, about to marry a man who saw her for exactly who she was, she understood that success wasn't about appearances or keeping up with others. It was about being brave enough to be yourself, and finding someone who loved that self completely. Ready? Nathaniel whispered as she reached him, his hand closing around hers. For the rest of my life, Madison whispered back. And as they exchanged vows, promising forever, Madison knew one thing for certain. Sometimes the best love stories start with a leap of faith, a ridiculous helicopter entrance, and the courage to believe that fairy tales can come true, even for ordinary girls from Ohio, especially for them. The end. Rate this story from 0 to 10, and let us know what you thought in the comments below. Don't forget to share where you're watching from.